Internet comments. Police officers of Reddit, what are some laws that you feel uncomfortable enforcing because you disagree with them? Please help this channel reach 200 subscribers, and also feel free to join the Reddit Discord community. Cheers. It's not a specified law as such, but in the UK people can use reasonable force to protect themselves, others and property etc. Obviously everyone has their own interpretation of what reasonable force is, but I remember going to one job where a bloke was sat on his couch with a beer watching TV when a drunk bloke has just walked straight into his living room via the front door. A confrontation ensued, and the drunk trespasser had become aggressive and a fight ensued. Long story short, the trespasser was given a proper shoe-in, so much so he's ended up in the street, where he has then called the police. We attended and his injuries were substantial enough that the house occupant was arrested for grievous bodily harm, GBH, and it most definitely rubbed me up the wrong way in being involved in that job, because I totally sympathized with the guy and felt any of us would have probably done the same thing if we were in his position. In my college town there were really only 4 bars within walking distance to campus, and they were all notoriously lax on their ID policy. Any fake got you in the door, and sometimes you didn't even need that. But the cops always kept their distance, because that meant students were drinking under the regulation of bouncers and bartenders, which was obviously preferable to the alternative of constantly throwing house parties. I also lived in a college town. My friend didn't have his wallet on him. I said to the effect of no worries, use mine. Handed him my driver's license, and he showed that to the bouncer. The ID exchanged hands in front of the bouncer, and he still let us in. Traffic tickets. I'd pull people over, give a verbal warning about whatever dumb or unsafe thing they just did, check for warrants and let them go. I got funny looks for the blank spot in my work card where the tickets were supposed to go, but since it's illegal to officially or unofficially have a quota system, it could never be used against me in my job evaluation. When I was a parking officer, there was an internal policy about not ticketing cars parked in this very wealthy neighborhood, even if it was clearly an unsafe violation. They would park their trailers or small boats very close to intersections, and that made it dangerous to navigate around there. Because there were too many bigwigs, we could have risked our jobs if we ticketed someone there, so they decided to not have the parking officers enforce it. I did the same. When I'd find underage kids with alcohol, dump it out, and be on your way. Aside from that, I pretty much never wrote tickets for equipment violations such as a headlight out, etc. I would just politely let the person know they needed to fix it. Lastly, I would rarely write tickets for expired registration, especially when the person was clearly struggling financially. I couldn't sleep at night knowing I had basically punished someone whose only crime was being poor. Where I work there is a statute prohibiting leaving your car running unattended. It is called no puffing laws. This is very popular during the winter time because nobody likes to freeze while their car is warming up. However, doing this makes your car more likely to get stolen. It's our policy that if an individual reports their car being stolen because they left it running, they will be ticketed. It basically penalizes the victim of a crime. Not a police officer, but still technically law enforcement at the time. When I was in the Coast Guard, I did a lot of drug and migrant interdiction down in the Caribbean. Chasing drug smugglers was pretty fun, but interdicting the migrants was always sad. We would usually find Haitians or Cubans, and the Haitians were always much worse off. It was pretty heartbreaking having to send them back after seeing the state they were in and the state of country they were trying to leave. They would go through such great lengths to leave, and we had to stop them. One guy tried to light himself on fire, and others would try and injure themselves to try and get us to take them to US healthcare facilities. The only redeeming thing about interdicting them was their ships were always very shoddily made, and oftentimes our act of interdicting them was also us saving them from a sinking ship. Weed. The penalties are excessive. Trafficking also has a much higher penalty, especially if supplying to a minor. You would get teens who would try to argue with you and say how they were just giving some/selling some to their friends. You don't have use this as evidence though, and a quick reminder of their right to silence does the trick. Have literally told 1 or 2 to shut up though, because they didn't understand. Self-defense laws. Had a bloke who defended himself, and rightly so. But his actions were right on line for justified vs excessive, so we opted to have the courts decide. That unfortunately meant arresting him. He was eventually acquitted, and I'm glad for it. Tenancy disputes. Some tenants are crap and deserve to be evicted. But there are a lot of landlords who treat tenants badly by not fixing urgent repairs, misusing their entry powers, etc. But if a tenant stops paying all of their rent, then they can rightfully be evicted. Sometimes the tenants can become upset, and we are called in. We always made sure we transported the evicted tenant to a place of safety. We had one landlord who was notorious for misusing police for this kind of stuff. We eventually ended up fining him because he had refused to repair a smoke alarm in a property. He had called us to evict the poor tenant and got the repair bill and a fine. Homelessness. We would get so many calls of transients in certain areas. Most are just laying in the sun on the grass, not bothering anyone. But all it takes is a phone call from a board commissioner or someone in power, and we'd get a call to tell them to move. We all hated it. Seatbelt tickets. I'm sure this is not a popular one, but if you don't like wearing your seatbelt while driving, I could care less. If you want a new face, that's on you. My dad was a sheriff's deputy for 28 years and always talked to me about the spirit of the law mattering more than the letter of the law. He believed in cutting people breaks whenever he could. Before weed was decriminalized here, if you had a small amount, like obviously personal consumption, he would usually just confiscate it and send you on your way. Provided you didn't have some outstanding warrant he couldn't ignore. He never believed that small stuff should determine the rest of your life, and felt like a victimless crime deserves a chance to correct itself. Suddenly everyone is a cop. I'm no cop, but I had an encounter with one. The cop came to my store as he was instructed to do. He was going door to door to fine all businesses for having advertising on their windows. So some lady in politics passed a law that all businesses displaying advertising on their windows are fined for having any type of sticker. The fine was €500 per window for not registering the sticker and a fee of €50 per SQM every year. He came in, and as anyone in my position would be, I got angry. They passed a law, didn't tell anyone about it, and went around collecting fines. He was terribly shy. You could see him mumbling, nodding, and getting red. And he apologized too. I'm really sorry, but I have to do this. Then he added to it only small businesses are targeted. He had to fine his own mother too, who is a florist. After he was done measuring the stickers, he calculated a €7,500 fine in total. I told him, I'm not going to pay a cent of that. That's about 6 months' wage for a small business like ours. He said, I hate the people enforcing stupid laws on small people. The big companies are free to do whatever they want. You know what? Close the shutters and stick a note to it stating closed. I'll take a picture of that and say you were closed, then you have a month's time to register the stickers. Then the fee is only $1,200 per year. I still didn't agree, but the truth is, next time they might send a not so nice officer, and here, if you don't pay, you lose your business. They will close it as soon as possible. So yeah, that's my story with a cop who didn't want to fine me because of a stupid law. I made this post a few minutes ago and just realized that the original question specifically addresses police officers, which I'm technically not. Hope you enjoy this anyways. Correctional office here. There are a few rules in place at my prison that I disagree with. The biggest rule I disagree with has to do with inmates beating off in their bunks. Technically, if we catch them on a prison date, we are supposed to put them in cuffs and escort them to solitary, but I don't always do that. Beyond the fact that I don't want some nasty sweaty guy coming on me, I also don't see a big reason to lock somebody up for enjoying themselves on their own time, provided that they aren't irritating anybody else. If they're in their bed and not being loud or obnoxious, or they're not beating off to a co, I usually just tell them to stop. If they're in the day room or they're staring at a co while they do it, I'll take them to solitary because they're usually doing it to make somebody uncomfortable or see what they can get away with. It's worse with female staff, but it happens to make staff as well. Unfortunately, I had to take walk-in inmates to solitary the other day for this reason. I guess my ass just looks too good in my pants or something. A guy in my town heard someone screaming for help in a car. He looked out and saw a wild struggle going on in the car. He went outside with his gun just as the woman got free and ran out of the car. The suspect tried to chase her, so the Good Samaritan fired a warning shot into the air. Warning shots are illegal in my state. Guess who went to jail? The Good Samaritan did, without handcuffs and with a call ahead to the jail to notify the deputies of the situation and to ensure he was treated extra well. It took a minute to understand the words coming out of the captain's mouth as I sat there trying to comprehend what he was telling me to do. The other terrible part is that the woman being attacked was a hooker stealing the man's money and he was fighting to keep his wallet. Thanks for watching. Please help this channel reach 200 subscribers and also feel free to join the Reddit Discord community. Cheers.